Welcome back to the latest edition of the internet's favorite IndyCar game, and that is which manufacturer's name is now going to be associated as the third manufacturer for all time, at least until that balloon is popped and everybody gets mad at me on social media for talking about things that the French people are talking about. So, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about today. But first, let's talk about something that was absolutely 100% confirmed today that I've been telling you about for probably the last, month and a half? Let's get into it. And oh yeah, he's been taken to the Shank. Simon Pagenaud has been confirmed for next year to the number 60 Meyer-Shank Racing Honda, teaming with Helio Castroneves in a Penske high school reunion. Now, my understanding is this is a short-term deal between 1 to 2 years. It could be a 1 year with a 1 option, or it could be a full-on 2-year contract. Not exactly sure yet. There's various conflicting reports on that, but the point remains is that Meyer-Shank Racing has created a super team for 2022. I know a lot of people are going to be a little bit harsh on the fact that they went with two. I don't want to necessarily say they're old. Well, Castroneves for sure is a part of the older generation. His rookie season was in 1998, okay? But the guy is still getting it done. Maybe not for a points championship. We'll still have to see. But the fact remains he qualified third at Long Beach and obviously just won his fourth Indianapolis 500. Simon Pagenaud, much younger. I would say just as hungry as Helio. I think in a lot of ways both of these drivers share the sentiment that at Team Penske they weren't the top dog and they weren't getting top dog treatment. So coming over to Meyer-Shank Racing, that's exactly what they have needed. And Helio has proven that he's still got gas in the tank. I think the same thing is going to be true for Pagenaud. Is it too early to pick Pagenaud to be the Indy 500 winner next year? Because if you look at it, I mean, the Indy 500, if Meyer-Shank Racing isn't absolutely the favorites, not just because they won it in 2021 next year, but because they're bringing these two drivers, at least, into the month of May next year, when you consider that Simon Pagenaud was a bad qualifying session away from winning the race last year with a bad Chevy motor, and obviously the fact that, or not a bad Chevy motor, but a Chevy motor that's not any good in qualifying, at least on the Penske side of things, driving up through the field, almost getting to second, and probably with 5 or 6 laps left in the race, he would have won. And this is definitely the right choice, in my opinion, from the pool of drivers that Shank had to choose from. I think he even said in an interview with Marshall Pruitt over on the Racer channel that, there was the idea that they could go young. They could go with a younger driver to develop immediately. But I think this is the right choice for a team that is just now going to 2 full-time cars next year. Having those veterans in there to really lead the team in the direction that they should go. I mean, again, Castroneves and Pagenaud are former Penske drivers. They know what they need and what the team will need to be consistent front runners. I mean, again, one of the things that Shank has struggled a little bit, which is weird, because in a lot of ways it's how they won the Indy 500. But on the road and street circuits, it seems like some of the strategy choices have been a bit weird. I think they've certainly cost Jack Harvey in the past an opportunity to win for that team. And in a lot of ways, I think a lot of people look at Jack Harvey unfavorably, unfairly, because of the fact that Harvey could have won some races that strategy cost him. I think you saw that again here with at Long Beach with Helio Castroneves. So hopefully that's something they work on in the offseason, because I think that's probably the one thing right now holding Meyer-Shank Racing back are some of the strategy calls. Because now they've got the performance, they've got the funding, they've got the drivers, they've got the experience, they've got the total package to be championship contenders. And certainly, like I said, the Indianapolis 500. I mean, if they're not the odds-on favorite going into next year, you got to be crazy. But of course, a lot of times in the Indy 500, when people are odds-on favorites to win the race, oftentimes they're the ones at the back getting bumped. So we'll have to, I mean, obviously, it's way too early to be making some sort of prediction. But I do think that this is an extremely strong combination going into 2023, and again, particularly for the Indy 500. Okay, the time has come. Toyota is the most recent in the rumor mill that is suggested will join IndyCar as its third manufacturer. Now, this comes from Julien Fabereau from Canal Plus, which is the French broadcaster of the NTT IndyCar series. Now, Fabereau was on the ground in Laguna Seca last week and claimed on French television that he heard Toyota would be joining the series in 2024. Now, full disclosure, this took me completely by surprise. I had heard nothing personally, and obviously there had been nothing reported in the broader media that suggested that there was any kind of a hope of a third manufacturer, even by 2024. So I was very surprised to see this. It was tweeted at me, and obviously it has set off a bit of a rumor mill at this point. Now, I would say that again, with all manufacturers, when we talk about the third manufacturer in IndyCar, there's always that okay, yeah, right. But I will say this, that this has been now out in the public, pretty public, or it has been pretty public knowledge that this is now a rumor for, 24 hours. And we have, of course, now a 24-hour news cycle in the world. And no one has come out and strongly, no one credible anyway, has come out strongly denied, oh yeah, this is not happening. So that obviously, points a little bit to me that there could be something to this. I also look at it from the perspective of, okay, of the manufacturers that potentially would want into IndyCar, Toyota would make a lot of sense. And let's bring up some points as to why. Number one, Vasser Sullivan is looking at becoming its own team starting in 2023, first year for the hybrids. They are a factory team for Toyota's luxury brand Lexus in the IMSA series. Now, obviously, if that was the only point, that would be stretching at straws. But it is interesting that Vasser Sullivan will be an independent IndyCar team starting as early as, a year and a half from now. Toyota already has a 2.4-liter hybrid V6 engine that is in their arsenal right now. Now, it came from the recently retired Toyota TS050 LMP1 car. However, IndyCar's next regulations call for a 2.4-liter hybrid V6. Now, again, not a gearhead. I don't know how much of a turnover would be required to get the LMP1 Toyota engine up to whatever IndyCar's new specs are. I know there would be a spec hybrid system attached to that engine that is part of the 2023 IndyCar regulations. So the question would be for, say, 2024, if you're looking 18 months into the future, what sort of, would you have to do a ground-up blueprint or a blank sheet of paper engine if you're Toyota, or would you be able to possibly start with an engine like was in the back of the TS050 hybrid? Now, one thing that a lot of people are pointing to, and I was actually kind of surprised that this article seemed to kind of shoot under the radar, is that Autoweek, and this article will be linked in the description because I do think you should absolutely read this article. It's get a pretty good insight into what manufacturers currently think of IndyCar. But Autoweek talked to several manufacturers that might, that we would probably think, hey, or you would possibly be looking to get an IndyCar. One of the people that they talked to was president of Toyota Racing Development, David Wilson. And this is the quote that he gave Autoweek. And I think it is quite interesting in the context of thinking that, hey, Toyota might be thinking about an IndyCar entry. Toyota and TRD are always having discussions within the garages that we currently compete, as well as other sanctioning bodies, to ensure we keep up relationships and maintain a finger on the pulse of U.S. motorsports. We enjoyed our previous experience with CART and IndyCar and trust that under Roger Penske's stewardship, IndyCar will continue to prosper. Right now, however, our focus is on our competition in NASCAR, IMSA, SRO, NHRA, Formula Drift, USAC, Power I, and off-road championship racing. Now, that does not sound like a confirmation, and I don't want to pass that off as it sounds like any kind of confirmation or any kind of like, oh yeah, no, we just can't say anything, wink. Obviously, in the immediate future, Toyota is not necessarily looking at joining IndyCar based on that statement. But I do think it is interesting when you contrast it with the definitive statements. Now they're part of larger, more wordy statements where, the manufacturers have to get in their promotion of what series they actually are in. But the definitive answers from Ford and Nissan. Ford said, we wish IndyCar well. They have great racing. It's not in our plans right now. And Nissan said, we have no plan at the moment to join the current OEMs involved in IndyCar. Now, when you look at that Toyota statement in the context of that, there was no just definitive no. Yes, it was like, right now our focus is on all of these other series we're in. But I think it would be fair to interpret Wilson's comments as being a bit more positive towards, or at least more warm toward the possibility of joining IndyCar than a lot of the other executives in the auto industry. Now, Toyota does have a history with IndyCar, as was stated by David Wilson. He definitely sugarcoated it. This was definitely a political answer when he was asked this, because Toyota, in my opinion and a lot of other people's opinion, definitely were a win-at-all-costs entity in IndyCar racing. They did some things that were a bit, didn't fly very, very hot with the kind of established order. They paid teams to join up in kart. They paid Chip Ganassi an incredible amount of money. They essentially raised the cost in kart significantly. Not only on the engine development side, but like I said, they would get teams. They would do whatever it took to get the top teams like Newman Haas and Chip Ganassi Racing to join them, and thus required other manufacturers like Ford and Honda to pay their teams to keep them away from Toyota. Then when they got to the Indy Racing League, they were a part of the wave of manufacturers that got rid of engines being owned by the teams and recreated engine leases being at the Indianapolis 500, which people have complained about ad nauseum. The other things that they did, they allowed Roger Penske to build his own engines when the rest of the teams had to get stuck with whatever Toyota Racing Development was developing. So there were a lot of things that ultimately, Toyota's legacy isn't necessarily like, totally, golden in IndyCar racing. Certainly they won a lot of the big races and championships. They won the kart championship in 2002 with Cristiano D'Amata. They won the Indianapolis 500 in 2003 with Gilles de Ferran. They won the IndyCar championship in 2003 with Scott Dixon. So they did have a golden age, but I think a lot of people's opinion would be at what cost. So let's say if Toyota was looking at joining, and I think I have a lot of reservations that a lot of people had about Ferrari joining, is that I hope that they would be reined in, because I think if you look at Toyota, not only in IndyCar racing, but across the board, a lot of times when they join, they certainly raise the competitive level of the series that they join. I think NASCAR is another great example of that. So at the same time, I think they would be a prime candidate, and that's why it kind of passes the smell test for me. Because IndyCar, let's face it, is on the rise, and Toyota, to me, are typically opportunists when they join series. So, it's not like something just kind of out of left field or stupid. It's not like, Skoda's going to join IndyCar or Lamborghini. I mean, that's come up a couple of times. And you kind of scoff at that and you go, yeah, right. Okay. All right. Sure. I believe you. Toyota makes me think a little more kind of like, I could see that. So we'll have to see. Obviously, it's all speculation. It's all rumor right now. But it's fun to talk about. That's why we talk about it. Believe it or not, despite the fact that people on the internet are going to get mad about it, people do like to speculate about it, because eventually there will be a third manufacturer in IndyCar. there will be manufacturers who want to join this series. And when they do, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later too, because again, like I said, IndyCar's on the rise, and you can only rise so much before you become very attractive to those manufacturers who are going to want their brand seen on the biggest stages. And if IndyCar and the Indianapolis 500 continues its rise, it's going to be a big stage, not only in the U.S., but globally pretty soon. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.